Just we're going to be able to record this, but we're still having some difficulties with the Facebook streaming, so we're just going to record it. We're going to move on. It's getting a little bit later in the day. We've had all long days and meetings, so let's call this meeting to order. Good to see everybody here today. And so I'm going to first off look for adoption of tonight's agenda. Can I have a motion? Move. Second? Second. All in favor? Opposed? None, just to make it clear for you.
Easy count.
Easy count. All right, my understanding thus far, we have no one for public comment tonight. Is that correct? Anybody?
Yes.
All right, we're good. All right, all the way around on that. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Neal.
In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any of the matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved.
Very good. And another reminder, I think we're well beyond the ethics statement
Yes.
time period. Okay, so we got full participation, I hope.
Yes.
We have nobody that's
100% compliance.
100% compliance. Congratulations, everybody. That's good. That's a real good thing. Give yourself a round of applause. Let's do that. All right, that's a good thing. All right, let's move down to the consent agenda tonight. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda tonight as published?
Second.
All right, all the way around, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. Opposed? None. All right, as published. All right, we're going to move over to Mary, moving along here, the education session. This is a memorandum of understanding, a meeting that we all, some of us just came out of. So I am going to turn the floor over to Mary, who's been our consultant, referee, everything else on it. So Mary, welcome. Good to see you again. Long time no see.
Right? It's only been what, about 15 minutes. Well, I have to tell you, even though I can't see over the top of this podium, I'm very happy to be in a room of highly ethical people. That is a wonderful thing. Hello, everybody. I'm Mary Kasmarak. And for those of you who don't know me, I really can't see over the top of this. I am a consultant and a former practicing attorney. I've recovered from that. And I've been doing facilitation work now for CRTPO for a number of years, probably about 7 or 8 years now. And I'm so happy to be working with this excellent subcommittee that your chair has formed on the topic of renegotiating your foundational document, your constitution, if you will, your memorandum of understanding that you're required to have. And we have copies of it, by the way. Does anybody want a copy of it? Just raise your hand. Curtis is going to hand those around to anybody who might want to have one. If you're really longing to have a legal document and have problems sleeping at night, you can pick this up. And actually, it's not that complicated. And if you haven't had a copy of it before, you might want to receive one now. So what my program is about this evening is just a very quick overview of the memorandum of understanding that is required by federal law and by state law for you to function as a metropolitan planning organization. And I want to tell you a little bit about the subcommittee that has been formed. Oh, how nice. Thank you. What? But that's
Yes.
it.
Sorry.
Oh, this is going to be much better. Right? I actually have one client who gets a little step stool for me when I'm standing behind the podium, but this is a much better arrangement. Yeah, so without too much further ado, let me tell you a little bit about just explain a little bit about this memorandum of understanding if you haven't really studied it before or not very familiar with it. And I also want to tell you about the work of the subcommittee and what you should be expecting hopefully in August, which will be to review and vote on the provisions of an updated MOU. So let's jump in here. Yeah, so the MOU is really your operating agreement in a way of comparing it as though you were a limited liability company. It is required by the federal government, by the state government. It's how you get money for projects. So it is absolutely important and material to your operations. It sets out probably the two most important terms from your perspective and from your constituents' perspectives are the voting rights that are spelled out in the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, as well as the cost sharing provision. We're not going to dig in too deeply to either one of those issues tonight, other than to reflect a little bit on the 2020 census results and how that will change your cost sharing. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. So let's talk a little bit about your return on investment from your participation in the Metropolitan Planning Organization. These are numbers for what you could be seeing up there is 2019, Neil, if I'm not mistaken. That's the period 2019 to 2022.
Yeah, I think it's the discretionary funds awarded by county from 2019 through 2022 or 2023. I can't see because the heading's obscured.
Right.
But this doesn't include STI controlled funds, but these are the CRTPO's discretionary funds.
What I have on my sheet that is not obscured is 2019 to 2023. So this is the money that you have been able, the funds that through your participation in the MPO that you've been able to access on behalf of your local counties. That's what again, that's part of the reason to participate in this organization. The legal basis for the Memorandum of Understanding it's pretty simple, actually. It's like just about anything else in this United States of ours. You have a federal component because so many of the funds that are provided for projects in your communities come through the federal government. So there's a federal component to it. There's a North Carolina state component to it that kind of tucks up under the federal piece. If you think about it, the federal piece is the top of the pyramid. Then we have state laws that we have to comply with. And then finally, your local MPO can make many decisions as to how the MPO will govern itself and how it will function. So I'm just laying out here very quickly for you the federal law provisions stemming from the Federal Highway Administration Act, first enacted in the 1960s, which provided the basis for a metropolitan planning organization, and then North Carolina state law, which further interprets the federal law. And we had an interesting discussion today at our subcommittee meeting led by one of City of Charlotte attorney Stuart Pratt, where he talked a little bit about how this framework works together. And we can certainly provide more information to anybody who's interested. But the preamble, if you have a copy of the MOU there in front of you, the preamble, those are what we lawyers call those whereas, right? That sort of sets out the various statutes that govern the formation of an MPO, the flow of federal funds, the cost sharing provisions, and so on. The agreements that were made in 2013. So just like in 2010, we had the 2010 decennial census that triggers a review of the Memorandum of Understanding under federal law. We're required to look back every 10 years. So just like in 2010, we didn't get the final census results until a year or two later. So now we're in the process of we've got those results and it's time to review them and look at the implications for changes in our community, and more on that in a second. All right, come on, you. There we go. So here's our Memorandum of Understanding. As you can see, I just mentioned it was finally codified and agreed upon in 2013. It is required for appropriate governance of the organization. Once it is approved at the MPO level by you, perhaps with some discussion, perhaps you will take the recommendations of our subcommittee. We really are digging into these issues at a pretty granular level. But once it's approved by you on behalf of your jurisdictions, then it goes to the governor of our state. And the Secretary of Transportation is usually the signatory on the MOU. I think you'll see that in the version you have in front of you, as does the division administrator for the FHA. And then it becomes binding on everyone who is part of our organization. But yeah, the census is the trigger. And now that we've got that, we've got to go and get things done. That's our plan, at least. One thing we are trying to do, just in total transparency, is we know that many of you have elections coming up in the fall. And we really would like very much to have we're having some very intense meetings right now that we're taking deep dives into many issues. I'll show you the issues in just a minute that we're looking at. But our goal is to hopefully present to you by the time of the August meeting, a document that is revised and updated and that we're going to ask the members to adopt. And there'll be more information coming to you in subsequent meetings. But yeah, this is the 2020 census results. I think you've all seen this information probably already, so I'm not going to belabor it. But basically, our urban area population grew, but our geographic area shrunk. And it's really, for funding purposes, we're looking more at population than we are at the actual land area. Let's see. Okay. Also, there were some changes in the way that the Census Bureau assessed the urban areas. And for anybody who is, has a nerdy interest in transportation law and census related law, we can dig more deeply into this. But basically, we were affected by these two rules in Statesville and Marshville, so-called hop and jump standard that allows for the inclusion of non-contiguous geographic territory. And then the qualifying urban area, that was another change that the Census Bureau made. So you probably have seen this before, and I'm going to ask our chair, Neil, or our secretary rather, Neil, to help me out a little bit if I stumble. But the gray area indicates the CRTPO municipalities, right, Neil?
Yep, that's right.
And then we go to the 2020 Charlotte urban area. That's that hashed purple area.
Barry, that's actually the 2010
Ooh.
Charlotte urban area. And then what you'll see in the next slide is
The green.
the 2020 census for the Charlotte urban area.
That's it. And those purple areas are what have been lost.
Correct.
As part of the or left out.
Yes.
Of the CRTPO territory there. Let's see. Where do we go next? Oops. Sure if this is gonna. Thank you. So now we're looking at Iredell County and the changes that impacted the territory of the urbanized area of Iredell County as a result of the 2020 census. The county boundary is that dark heavy line, the CRTPO planning area, and what are known as extraterritorial jurisdictions are contiguous in this diagram. Neil, do you want to comment on the extraterritorial jurisdiction just briefly?
Yeah, so these, as many of the elected officials and staff are aware, were kind of established to determine, future utility annexation agreements. And, they were probably more relevant when we were going through the reconstitution process following the 2010 census than they are today.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And in particular, this map here, the polygons that have a shading to them, that's actually the municipal limits. But then the ETJ is those solid lines kind of encircling the three municipal boundaries here in Iredell County.
All right, and then we go on. Thank you, Travis. And here we have Mecklenburg County. And it's pretty much the county, it's one little dinky little area down here that's kind of below Pineville that is kind of orphaned at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, so that is the only area of Mecklenburg County that is not in a sphere of influence or an ETJ.
Okay. So again, changes to the area covered by our MPO as a result of the most recent census. Travis, let's go ahead. And here we have Union County finally. This is kind of interesting, isn't it? So you've got the county boundaries, you've got the CRTPO planning area, and then the ETJ boundaries. Neil, you want to comment on that? They're hard to pick out. I guess just right around the Monroe area. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a little more difficult to discern those here in Union. There's a little piece in Stallings up near the county boundary there. You can barely probably make it out on the map. Then Monroe has some, Marshville has some, and then that dashed boundary kind of on the east side and the south, that is the CRTPO planning area boundary. So CRTPO's planning area does not take in the entirety of Union County. So the areas outside of that are part of the Rocky River Rural Planning Organization.
So they're picked up by another MPO. Okay, let's go, Travis. Yeah, so here are, just those statistics kind of spelled out for you. The reduced area in square miles. I guess nobody lives on Lake Norman at this point. So that was taken out of the Iredell County area, the square miles attributed to that county previously. And you can see the rest of the information area here with regard to the reductions. Let's move on. Yeah, so let me tell you about our subcommittee. This is a small and mighty band of members of your board that Chair Ron Pappas, with help from Lisa Qualls, your vice chair, put together not too long ago. We wanted it to be representative of the entire MPO. And so you can see the members there, Ron and Lisa, Ed Driggs from Charlotte, Renee Garner from Matthews, Craig Horn from Weddington, David Jones from Statesville, Rob Kidwell from Huntersville, and then Brad Richardson from Stallings. We met first in March. And again, I'm sort of repeating myself here, but we really had a strong feeling that we wanted to get out ahead of the election process. If we do not, and we're not able to get the MOU finalized by the time this board has completed its work at the end of the year, it's a good chance we'll have to restart in 2024. And I don't think anybody wants to do that. That's a waste of, time and resources. So we pledge to you, as I'll speak on behalf of my subcommittee here, that I facilitate our promise is to do our work and get you something that you can look at and review and hopefully approve it before the September season starts. Let me show you what we are talking about and thinking about in terms of topics. At our first meeting in March, I asked the group to pick and choose among a variety of topics that I had come up with from my review of the MOU, ideas I'd gotten from Neil Burke, from Bob Cook, and from Brian Elgord on your staff. We had put together this laundry list of issues, and then we asked the subcommittee members to talk among themselves and make decisions about what they wanted to look at. So this is what they came up with. The first topic we covered today, which was educating ourselves, took a deep dive into the legal issues, the historical issues, to better understand why are these provisions in the MOU? How did this come to be? We looked at minutes from former meetings. We also looked at how the weighted vote has been used in past decision making. And the next, you want to keep going there, Travis? We also looked at census data, and interestingly, we have a preliminary cut of cost sharing information based on the new census numbers. Your leadership, Bob, Neil, Ron wanted to share that first with the county managers. Because some of the population in your towns is now going to be attributed to the counties, increasing their cost share. Relatively speaking, not by much, but we wanted to get out in front of any concerns that the county managers might have. They're in a budget planning process right now. So it was particularly important that we talk to them before finalizing that information and sharing it with you. But we looked at that today collectively. We looked at how the change in population percentages have affected that. Now, Travis, keep going here. Let's put everything else up. We also want to, and you know, this might not be the time to have this discussion because we're time limited right now. But if any one of you has an interest in talking with any of us, anybody on the subcommittee, your chair, your vice chair, about how your thoughts on the MOU, we're going to be doing some outreach to each member to see if we can answer your specific questions or concerns that you have on behalf of your committee on behalf of your community as we go through this process. So that's open for you. Next month, we're going to jump into looking at other MPOs that are comparable to CRTPO, just to see what they're doing within their MOUs. Maybe we'll get some interesting ideas, better ideas for the governance document. And we've also, this is something the subcommittee wanted to do, is to look at a fair alternative to weighted voting and how it might apply in typical circumstances. We're not saying that that's going to be up for a vote, or you'll see that in the, you know, ultimate version of the MOU we present. But we thought it was very, very important to be transparent and at least to look at these issues.
Mary, could I just note that that language is not intended to connote that the current weighted vote is unfair?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's a good point, Ed. And I appreciate your comment. I think we've got one more on this. Yeah. And then finally, in our July meeting, we want to look at those share amounts more carefully based on the new population data. And we want to be able to report to you in our sort of final report and, you know, summarization of information, the specific benefits beyond, you know, the return on investment data that I just shared, but what you should be looking for, you know, from this organization on behalf of your community. Many of you are well aware of that. Perhaps some of you are not. And so that's something we just want to make sure that we study collectively and present to you. So go ahead, Travis. I think we've got, yeah. So this is where we are. We had our meeting today, and we had a fact-filled, interesting discussion. We decided that I think at the end of the day that we've looked into these issues. We still have some questions we want to keep discussing, but we're ready to move on now to look at other MPOs, MOUs, and talk about how the weighted vote is used and will be used going forward. And I think that's it for me. You want to, yeah, there's our next two topics. And with Ed's caveat on the second point, that was a good catch. And that's where we're going, and we'll be back to you in August. But in the meantime, anybody who has a question, a concern, wants to talk more deeply about these issues is, you know, please get in touch with Neil, and we'll put you together with people who can answer your questions. Anybody have a question right now?
Hey, Mary, one comment based on the outcome of our meeting this afternoon. We're going to move our meeting. It said the 21st up there. It's going to be Thursday, the 29th from 4 to 6.
Yes, as a matter of public record, that's important that we note that the next meeting, because one of us is very lucky to be going on a long out of country vacation. So we're not going to stand in the way of that. Ed, I just had my own long out of the country vacation, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to work with your organization. You've got some really great things going on here. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And again, any last minute questions we can consider, but I'm going to say that Mary's done a great job on guiding us through what could look like a very complicated process, but the framework is already there. It's already established on us. And so we just need to look at it, make sure that framework is functionally good, if you will. And then if we have any reasonable changes. And when I say reasonable changes, something that may be not legal anymore or is in conflict with another part of the agreement, we need to look at that. But I'm going to very much encourage you to get yourself familiar with the document. It's not that tough to read, get it to understand it. We're going to be moving fairly fast because we've discovered, at least in the subcommittee, that it's fairly understandable and fairly simple in the big picture, but it can raise some questions. So we want you to be prepared to take a look at it, and hopefully we can polish it all off by August meeting. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. She's done a lot of work for us. We just came out of that meeting past. So now I'm going to move down to Travis. You're going to tell us about the Transportation Improvement Program, the public comment survey. So this is again informational. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Travis Johnson. Thank you very much for having me tonight. Tonight, we're going to go over an update on the draft 2024-2033 Transportation Improvement Program public comment period. So again, we're just going to update you on the comments we've received, talk about our supplementary public comment period that we are currently we're finishing today, and then we'll go over the next step, and then I'll stop to see if anyone has any questions. So again, a public comment period began on March 16th and concluded on April 14th. During that public comment period, we did receive one comment. In addition to that, we received an email from NCDOT that updated project schedule timelines on 16 projects. Those projects were shared in your agenda packet and are on the website. Due to the number of project updates we received, we opened a supplementary public comment period. So that was from May 4th to May 17th. We released another press release about this. We updated our website accordingly. And so we extended the public comment period from May 4th to May 17th to make sure that everyone had a chance to review the updated schedule and timeline. And we put all of our documents again back up for comment during that time period. Since that, we still had the original comment we had received from the town of Cornelius. We received a letter from the town of Huntersville. We also received a comment from a resident and then Bike Walk North Carolina. Just general concerns about project schedule, concerned about the number of active transportation projects in the list. And then just concerned about scheduled delays on a freeway. So we're going to collect all those comments, put them into a matrix, and then create feedback for all those questions. And we'll give us a summary of those comments when we come to you for a decision. So again, the document was released. We've been going through initial public comment, or NCDOT went through an initial public comment period in December of 2022. We brought back the list of projects. We opened our own public comment period. NCDOT distributed the final version of the STIP, which changed some project schedules. So that leads us to where we are right now, where we are currently in the TIP public comment period, a supplementary TIP public comment period. That'll conclude today. And then we're here to give you an information item, just as we gave to the TCC. So we'll be coming back to you next month with the list of projects, with a summary of the public comments received, and a request for adoption. So with that, do we have any questions?
Pretty simple around the board. Any questions for our presenter? All right. Thank you, Travis. We'll move on to the next item, and you're up again.
Thank you very much. Hey, everyone. Travis Johnson, great to be here.
Long time no see.
Yeah. I want to give you a brief update on prioritization 7.0. So again, this is what the conclusion of this process is, what you're approving. We just talked about for the update of the STIP and the TIP. So this process will lead us to another STIP and a TIP down the line. So we're going to give you just a general update on prioritization, talk about schedules, and then pause to answer any questions you might have. I don't know why the top bar is not closing. Try that. That's not working. Oh, well. So the prioritization 7.0 is to identify projects for modes: highway, bicycle, pedestrian, transit, rail, and aviation. Additionally, there are options for ferry projects, but we do not have a ferry in our region, so we don't get to nominate projects as part of this process. I'm leading this process, and this is going to be different, where historically we had one staff member lead the process, who was Neil. But as you can imagine, Neil's been taking on a lot more responsibility. So I'm taking over the process for this prioritization cycle. So what's different about this version is we've separated the different modes into different team leads. And so you might have already seen emails or seen communication from Jarrell, Curtis, Brian, or myself. Just know that it's because we're all working on different we're working on different modes to create our projects list for P7. So P7 or prioritization 7 is to come up with a list of projects to be funded through the through three buckets: the statewide tier, the regional tier, and division needs tier. Statewide being the projects that compete again across the region of North Carolina, regional, which competes against NCDOT regions, and then the divisions are projects that would then compete against other division projects. So again, the way the funds are split up is it's just 40% of the total funding amount is for statewide, but again, those projects compete against all projects in the state. So you'll be competing against projects in Asheville or wherever they might be. Regional impact are just for the NCDOT regions, and this amount of money is dependent upon the percentage of state population each region, NCDOT region has. And then division needs, everyone gets an equal share. When it comes to submitting projects after they are submitted, statewide projects are rated based upon a quantitative process, 100%. So how they rank and what the metrics are that go into that are the score that we then receive. So then when those get submitted, that then sets the priority for how they would get ranked and then funded. For regional impact, we have the opportunity to apply local input points, which will come later in the process. And then that affects 30% of the overall project score. And then division needs, where we have the most influence over what projects will get ranked, where we have 50% is from the quantitative score ranking, and then 50% will come from our local input. So as an MPO, we start with 12, and then for every 50,000, we get an additional submittal slot. And then for every 500 centerline miles, we receive an extra submittal slot. So with that, the NCDOT, or it's not NCDOT, CRTPO will receive 49 slots for this process. For this prioritization cycle, I believe last time it was 47. And then also independent of us, NCDOT also has their own submittal slots that they can fill as with projects. Prior rounds for the CRTPO, we typically, the highway number is 47 because that was the max that we had before, but typically we max out the number of highway projects. We typically do about 20-25 bike ped projects, 5 or 7 transit projects, 5 or 7 rail projects, and then about 25 or 35 aviation projects. The reason why the highway is maxed out and then the rest of the modes are not is, again, remember, this is from this STI law, or strategic investment law, which requires that 90% of the funds go towards highway. So the rest of the modes are all competing with a much smaller pool of money. So what's going to create the prioritization 7.0 list? So after the 2024-2033 STIP is adopted, projects that are in years 6 through 10 will automatically be moved into as a carryover project and be included in the P7.0 database. Any sibling project of a STIP project or where planning is currently underway will automatically count as a carryover project. And so when they're categorized as carryover projects, it means that they get put into the database and they do not count as one of our 49 submittal slots. So they get back in there, they go through the ranking process, and they're eligible for funds. If they don't meet one of those 2 categories, then we have a holding tank projects, and these are projects that have been submitted before that do not meet the top 2 categories. And then we have the option to resubmit them in prioritization 7.0. But as at this point is when it starts eating into our maximum number of 49 submittal slots. So after the holding tank projects, we select the projects we want to submit from that process. That's when we go to accept new project entries. And then that's what's left available for all modes except for highway. We go to the different modes. We ask for new projects to be submitted. And they are able to submit new projects that they've been adopting plans or new projects as part of that process. For highway, the way the process is set up, so I don't know why I yelled that. For the highway mode, the way that process is set up is we select the projects from the 2050 MTP or the last MTP that was adopted. We rank them based upon their horizon year and then their overall point score. And then we just select the top ranking score based upon the closest horizon year. And again, horizon year is the estimated time in which the project is open to the public. And we fill those empty available submittal slots that are left after we've added in all the carryover slots, added in over the holding tank projects, and put in the new projects. It's important to note too, also, all 49 projects do not get funding. This is just the maximum number of submittal slots you can submit to be considered for funding. And then we're still restricted by the overall dollar amount we receive from NCDOT for what projects will get funded. So for this prioritization 7.0 cycle, for highway, we have 34 carryover projects and 46 holding tank projects. Bike ped, transit, rail, and aviation. Only aviation has one carryover project. And then you see bike ped is 25, transit 4, rail 6, and aviation is 19. So we've been working with the airports. We've been working with the rail division to identify new projects. We've been working with your transit partners to get new transit projects. And then the bicycle and pedestrian work group typically is responsible for submitting new projects through the last meeting. They met to talk about the existing project list and any new projects, and the jurisdictions had an opportunity to submit new projects. And so again, as you can see, we have 46 holding tank projects. We've been meeting with a subcommittee to go through those projects, but as you can see, there's not going to be many opportunities for new projects to be submitted as part of this process, with 46 projects being there. It's looking like some of those projects are eligible to be removed because they've been funded through other sources. But again, we're looking at about 3 or 5 new projects to be submitted overall. Those list of projects will be at the next meeting. So again, the STIP development process starts this month and goes until September. So this is when we have the chance to opportunity to identify prioritization 7.0 projects. And the next slide, I'll go over what that means. So after we get the projects submitted by the end of September, they will go into the STIP spot office, review and score all the projects. That'll then be an opportunity for us in May to assign local input points. And then September and November, NCDOT will calculate the final scores and program projects. And then the anticipated release of the draft 2026-2035 STIP would be December of 2024. This is essentially that list that we were just talking about in the previous presentation, but for the previous cycle. So again, these cycles just overlap each other and they keep going. So once this cycle starts, we will then probably be talking to you about prioritization 8.0. So again, in June, we opened all modes, all submittal modes for, in June, NCDOT opened all modes for scoring. We are here today providing information on it, but we will be coming back next month to share with you a list of potential projects and to request the opening of a public comment period for those projects. And again, this is not the final list. This is the best list of what we can pull together at that time. We'll still be collecting feedback. We'll still be evaluating the information for accuracy, making sure all the information is as up to date as it can be. After the public comment period, we'll then come back to you in August. We'll update the information as necessary. We'll clean up the spreadsheets and the GIS shapefiles to make sure everything looks accurate. And then we will come to you for a recommendation. After the recommendation in August, it'll be up to us to submit all the projects. So again, it's 49 per mode, so over 100 projects we will be submitting. And then once we get it submitted into the Spot online databases, then when the ranking process starts. So again, this is a process to get us to the initial start of what will be a multi-year process. So with that, do we have any questions about prioritization 7.0?
That's a lot of work. Ed?
If I may, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. So we go through all of this, we submit, and then at some point, does all of this get dumped into a hopper with all the other submittals around the state and then ranked according to those STI criteria? Or is that so that this is the input into a prioritization process that the state uses to decide who gets what, subject to a quarter cap or other constraints?
Correct. So the projects are separated into 3 separate categories: statewide, regional, and division. So all the projects will go into the Spot database and they'll be evaluated based upon the type of mode that is being submitted and the criteria that is set for each mode. At that point, then the projects will then have opportunity for additional input through the local input point process. And so that's after we get the scores back, we'll see where everything settles. And we have the opportunity to then influence the final score by applying our local input points. And we are restricted by the maximum number of input points we're allowed to put on a project. Additionally, that requires us to coordinate with our NCDOT partners because they also have points that they're allowed to put on projects as well. So we will need to work with our partners and make sure that the projects that come out through the initial process still make sense when we get to that point. And then we'll have to coordinate with the NCDOT partners to make sure that the projects we know our region needs are set up to elevate to the point they need to. So the division needs, we have the most input for where that matters, because again, that's 50% of the total score. regional, it affects it a little bit, it's a 30%. But again, when we're talking about larger statewide projects, like interstates, that's a quantitative process, and what we get is what we get. So that's why it's so important that everything is accurate.
Complicated. Okay, thank you.
All right, no problem.
Any other questions around the table? We're good. I think it's also important to note that, become familiar or make sure your teams are familiar on how to move through this process. If they have anything, get the advice and direction from staff. So whatever project may or may not be submitted is really your best foot forward and best prepared. I know we've had lots of confusion in the past about, how to submit. And I think maybe some projects were missed because of some technical submittal issues. So if you have a question, make sure you get with staff, with your staff, get with our staff over here, make sure they understand the process so we can have the best outcome and the best chance of success. So with that, you're off the hook. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. And Travis, are you going to control the screen for me again?
Yep.
All right, so we're going to do a little recap here on what we submitted over in February, which took a little bit of work to get there. So I'll give you a little history and update. A lot of people here in the room already know a lot of this information, but there are some new people in the room. But over a period of time that NCDOT received what they refer to technically as an unsolicited proposal. So anybody can do that at any time. What's got up for the next screen there for me? Okay, so the history on this. So again, having the ability of anybody to submit a proposal is open. That can happen from anybody at any time. This particular one we now know came from the existing provider on the north. And so we wanted to make sure that we are all in concert, at least to understand, and we want to be able to open up that box to understand what's in it, so to speak. So, and it goes way back into 2007. You can see on the chart up there that the predecessor to us and the other agencies, they initiated the fast lane study. 2010, MUMPO adopts the resolution. You get to 2014, you got 3 separate items there. 2015, they complete a feasibility study. 2016, you go P4, and it includes it in the 2018-2027 STIP. And then you move again to 2018. You've got 3 actions there. And here we have it on the list, CRTPO for the 2050 MTP. So it's not something new. It's not something that is a surprise to us. It's been in the process for a long time. We just need to take a good hard look at it. There's a lot of financial constraints along the way, funding, you got quarter caps to consider, you got location. There's a lot of parts to this one. And I thought that we all had agreed to take a look at it. And so that's where we are today. In February, we gave direction to the DOT to start to open this box up. And I'm positive that there are a lot of parts to it in organization. It just didn't happen the day after we granted them that direction, but there's a lot of parts to it. And what happens next will be described to us a little bit. We've invited DOT, Brett Knight from Division 10 to come up and tell us what they've started since then. Again, I know it's a complicated ramping up process, so he can tell us how that works. And we had asked them for quarterly reports, and this is the first of the quarterly reports. So Brett, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman Pappas. The timeline is still up on the screen. As the chairman indicated, this project's been around for quite a while, that being the I-77 South corridor improvements. And so I'll get into a little bit more detail about some of the more recent history, and then an update on this process revolving around the unsolicited proposal, and talk about a little more information. Hopefully, try to answer any questions y'all may have at the end. So, just to start with, want to remind everyone again that any toll project in the state of North Carolina has to be requested and approved by the local planning organization, and that's you guys, obviously, here at the CRTPO. to recap, what the chairman had said there, this project was originally submitted in P3. That is one of the initial rounds of spot scoring since the STI legislation was enacted. The scope at that time proposed to widen I-77 from the Brookshire Freeway all the way down to I-485. And you'll see here that the scope kind of flexed and changed over various rounds of STI, but it was 9.5 miles at the time, 1.2, a little over $1.2 billion. Fast forward a couple years into to P5.0, and the project limits were expanded. That kind of does correlate, by the way, with some of the feasibility work that we had done about figuring out where's the most reasonable place to tie these lanes in. And so now that project scope in that round took it down to the South Carolina state line. It also included ramp metering as an addition to the project at that time. So as you can see, the project has morphed a little bit, but generally speaking, this project's been around in about the same form for a number of years. Right now, where we stand, the last round of P6, which everyone here now knows was not a funded round of STI, that project estimate came up to 2.1 billion. And that's with that same project scope of going all the way down to the South Carolina line. And the unsolicited proposal, recapping on that, again, over a year ago now, in February of 2022, we received an unsolicited proposal from Centra to widen I-77 south from the center city. In this case, their proposal, by the way, showed taking it down to I-485, a little bit different than that last scope we talked about. So again, just a little difference there. We talked about it quite a few times here, came down to visit you guys, tried to give as much information as we could. So a year later, just this past February, we were asked to move forward with this initial screening of the unsolicited proposal, as well as to move forward with a comparative analysis of, to explore what would it look like if this was a publicly funded and delivered project or a privately funded and delivered project. And so those two processes are now underway. So what we've done right now is we've formed this work group that's going to continue to review the unsolicited proposal. Neil Burke is on that work group, along with myself, Sean Epperson, our deputy division engineer here in Division 10, NCTA, David Roy. We've got Attorney General's office representation, and then we've got technical team members from NCDOT that'll help us through the process. So it's going to take us just a little bit of time. We'll get into the schedule of how long we think all that's going to take. But essentially, we want to figure out, is this proposal, does it comply with our policy? We want to answer that question. And we want to see, what's different about what's different about that proposal versus what we've got planned and prioritized. I've kind of already touched on that with you guys just a moment ago, noting the differences between the ending points on the southern side. Right now we're showing going to the state line. This proposal shows going to I-485. So just a minor difference, but we'll explore what that means to us. We do have another meeting set up with that work group next week, and where we will get into the details of what that proposal has in it and its contents, and I'll go over that with you in just a minute. So again, the technical considerations, the details of that proposal, what we'll be looking at. We know it's not a new concept. We know this project has been around for a while. That's been well documented. There are some differences, relating to the number of lanes, particularly between in the Moorhead Street area, up to 277 with an additional lane there, compared to what our concepts show today. Again, it does show a reduction in the total length of the project. So that difference that I've talked about a few times already, it's 1.8 miles shorter than what's shown in the description of our current STIP project. It is an approach that would reduce right-of-way impacts. Obviously, no matter how this project gets delivered, we're gonna want to deliver it as cheaply and as efficiently as possible. If you can use the term cheap when you're talking about a couple $2 billion, right? That's tough to say. So I think one thing that's important for us to all recognize as we walk through this, though, that this proposal was received over a year ago. A lot has changed in the financial world since then. We all know what's happened with interest rates. Construction cost indexes continue to climb. And so I think we're definitely would need to take a hard look at their financial considerations, comparing that to the reality of what we know today. So we've got to revisit the economics of the proposal for sure. So we think this is going to be a relatively short duration process. We expect 2 or 3 months that we'd be working on it. And, when we get together, we're going to be looking at this bulleted list of items. It's, the intent would be to check boxes, right? We're going to just check these boxes and determine, what does this proposal look like? What does it contain in terms of all these items? The schedule for the delivery, the terms of the contract, what did they propose? Is it a 50-year term again, just like the other one? That's in there, for example. The proposed timeline for construction is, potentially, it was proposed to start next year. So a lot of time has already gone by. That target might be difficult to hit now. We'll be looking into the revenue forecasting projections, cost of the project, how they determine, what do they propose for financing models? Did they account for depreciation, taxes, and the equity and the return on their investment? So all those sorts of things will be evaluated, and then we can report all that back. So the intention is to, excuse me, I think I'm losing my voice. The intention is to bring that back to this group and present an update. And here's our schedule. It's a pretty quick duration. Again, these are the couple of tasks have already been completed. The review of the public information. That was some of those details I described, like how long is this project proposed to be by the ending of solicitor proposal? What assumptions were made? It's the information we've all seen in the public, what was released to us. Continuation of this analysis of the full proposal. And then we think we could be back here, hopefully in the August timeframe, to present the findings of our work. So all the while, we're going to go into the deeper dive of the public-private comparator. This is something that's required by FHWA. It's going to provide us with a lot more information, some details about what this project could look like as a publicly delivered or privately delivered project. That's a longer process. It's more detailed, it's more involved. But again, I think it's going to provide us all with some good information. That might take around a year to complete. And let's not forget that we're still working on I-5718, the project that's in the STIP, the widening of I-77 south from the center city to the South Carolina state line. So we are continuing to work on all these things at the same time, hoping to arrive with more information for a collective decision by this group. So we do, again, plan on being back in August for an update with the findings of that review. So that's it. Be glad to take any questions y'all might have.
All right, well, that's a lot of work to absorb in that. And again, I want to reiterate, this is a working partnership. I think this is probably some new ground that previously didn't happen as well as it is. So we want to make sure that we take our time and hit that target. I think it's a good point to bring up as well, that the existing STIP is already in place. This is being worked in parallel to it, just to see if there's a good alternative for all of us to make a choice on.
Yeah.
So with that around there, I'm going to flip it over to Mr. Ed. So you ask a question.
So when we discussed this before, we were talking about a comparison along the lines of a delivery using the P3 in, I guess, the early 2030s versus a probable delivery under STIP in the 2045 to 2050 range. Do you expect that comparison to change a lot, or is there nothing to indicate that it's different?
Yeah, I'd hate to speculate on that. I think the process is it's gonna answer that question though. You know, it's gonna get into the level of detail that we can conduct detailed traffic and revenue forecasting. You know, we can do our own financial modeling, you know, so I think we'll have some of those answers when we're done. But I'd hate to really speculate now to say I think it would, you know, change.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may.
The other thing is, in August, are you expecting this body to make a decision about the public versus private? Like, is that the point at which, or are you just going to give us some recommendations and then more? I'm particularly interested to know at what point in time would we consider somebody other than Sintra as we evaluate the private option?
So what the review of the unsolicited proposal will accomplish, it's going to make a recommendation. That review, that work group that Neil and I are on, we're going to make a recommendation to either reject or to accept this proposal. But that's all it is. It's just, you know, you accept it or you reject it, right? It doesn't tell us we have to do anything else with it. We can leave it sitting there, or we can, you know, eventually come back to this group with more information, and then it could be determined whether or not we want to continue to pursue a publicly funded project, or do we want to explore further the P3 option? So, but we're not making any decisions on Centra or anyone else at this point.
But when you say accept or reject what?
So to accept the proposal,
The Sintra proposal?
yeah, to accept it, as in, we're going to accept this proposal. If we go forward with a P3 procurement, then Centra would be shortlisted based on our current policy if we go through a P3 procurement. But that would be a publicly, competitively bid process. So
we would decide at that time whether to exclude Sintra, or at least that bid, from any further private alternatives. But what I'm getting at then is we will still keep looking at private and public after that.
absolutely.
The only question that we might face in August is whether we will continue to consider the Sintra proposal, like keep it alive for the purposes of subsequent rounds, or exclude it.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Just to
about
see if
right.
it has merit is where.
To see if it
Right.
has merit. Yeah, if it has merit, it meets all of our policy requirements, checks all the boxes. Everyone's satisfied that it's a reasonable proposal, and it's a proposal, not a bid. It's, you know, that's essentially all it does, is it says that this proposal is reasonable or not.
So when do you expect that this body would be asked the question, do we do private or public? Last chance. So
Is this just my water? That's kind. Thank you. Thank you, Travis. Excuse me. Thank you, Bob. So I think we're a ways from that. We've got to get through that public-private comparator piece first. We've got to bring that information back to you. But before we decide to go the P3 route or the public funded and delivery route, you know, we're going to come back to this group. That's going to be after that in-depth review and comparison is complete.
And we might be out, what you're saying is what I'm reading on the screen as well, and we've talked about, this could be a year from now.
Yeah.
So I'm just concerned that nothing that we do between now and then effectively limits our choices or creates anything other than a level playing field for bidders. And it sounds to me like we're good about that, but like if we say, yes, keep Centra alive, we haven't committed to a private solution. We haven't given Sintra any precedent.
Correct.
All we have said is we're not going to exclude that particular proposal
Correct.
from our further evaluation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right,
Brett,
thank you.
I got one question. So, and this will kind of piggyback off what Ed just said about a level playing field. It seems like that the player in this game right now is Centra. They're the ones that are driving this unsolicited proposal. And I want to make sure that if we look at going with a public-private partnership or a private partnership, that the rules that have been established for any other players in the game are not rules that will be advantageous to Centra versus any other bidders that there's a precipice that could be set that makes it unfair for anybody else to play in the game. And I want to make sure that if we're moving this down the road, that everybody literally is going to be level set. So another vendor can come in and not have to adhere to the rules that have been established preemptively by Centra as this thing is moved down the road. But something that could be fair to anyone.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
Again, if we go down that path of procurement for a public-private partnership to deliver this project, it will be and must be competitively bid. 100% competitively bid.
Stephen,
I think, Mr. Chairman, just to allay some fears, there's no bias towards Centra with DOT. It's totally as Brett described. And I think let's get up to 70,000 feet. There's going to be a lot of discussion at the state level, whether this is going to be a state toll road, a public road, a private road. That hasn't been determined. And when it's a $2 billion expenditure, which is our total expenditure in any given year for transportation, you can bet there's going to be a lot of talk and study before any decision comes down.
exactly. And the scope may or may not adjust as this both parallel courses go. So it's the scope that's going to set the pace for that. Then the bidders are going to come to bid on that scope. So no matter what's in this proposal right now, we could add to it, subtract to it, whatever, use parts of that information as we go forward. It's just really a document that we're, again, trying to see if it has merit. And now how do we look at it, apply it to what we want, and then make decisions, okay, based on all the information that we've been able to gather, what does the scope look like? Then from that scope, you start the bid process.
Well,
That'd be
again, I
correct.
just want to make sure that same thing doesn't happen this time that happened the last time.
I agree.
There was one bidder
Yeah.
and that was it. And I just want to make sure that I
Was it one bidder?
personally don't want to accept one bidder.
Well, this,
I think there was
So
more
that-
than
that's-
one.
That'd be my problem.
Yeah.
5 points.
Well, I don't think there was one, but to that, I mean, again, let's go back and, yeah, we learned from the history. It
Okay.
was ugly,
Fair
you
enough.
know, probably not fine, but we're smart board here.
Okay.
Okay, and we have a lot of input, and I think that we can watch that, and we're gonna have help. And again, as I'm saying, this is a partnership. This is maybe a first, but I think we have a good working group going on here.
I would agree. I would
So-
agree. And I really want to address that concern that Mary Knox had. So again, I'll remind you guys that there's exit ramps all along the way. Up until the point a contract is signed, this organization can cast a vote to not move forward with the project. So, you know, there is the opportunity. So if the outcomes aren't satisfactory, the recommendation to NCDOT will be the will of this board. So.
But we are fortunate enough to have that working relationship. We can pull the plug anytime we're uncomfortable. I mean, hopefully that's a reasonable ask if that ever came to, but we've been working to be able to have a very significant input to this, and I appreciate that. Dennis.
Yes, thank you. I just want to confirm my understanding that, you know, you have the financial review. We have an active project and current results on I-77 North. So as you look at what I think you mentioned could be a very similar 50-year proposal, we now have the same vendor. We have the same similar approach to compare actual results. So that's part of the review. Is that correct?
So you're saying comparing
How I-77 North has
is
progressed
performing?
in terms of the financials and what was proposed and how it's performed. You see what I mean? So we have I-77 where we looked at their proposal.
Yeah.
It's now been in place. How has it performed?
As a comparative, yeah.
If-
So will that be part of the review of the unsolicited proposal.
Correct.
I don't know that that's necessarily part of it, but I hate to answer that off the cuff because again, there might be some details in there that I'm missing, so I can definitely get back to you if you don't mind to clarify that. And it might be that it just makes sense to do that. And so we can evaluate that.
Yeah, same company, similar proposal. I would think, we have an actual live example of how it performed or is performing.
And that's a good ask for consideration. We should know all the parts. We should know all the parts that may have made some of us or all of us uncomfortable in the past. We should really be able to identify those to our satisfaction going forward. And then we can make a good and informed decision to direct them. So Brett, if you'd follow up with that a little bit, maybe get him a preliminary answer on that, and then maybe you can run that through so it's transparent for everybody. Run that through Neil so we can distribute that Q&A.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions, Lee?
So I have a couple questions. You began by saying any toll projects have to be requested by the local planning organization. And so for members of the public who are listening, what you're saying, what you're reminding is that this local planning organization, CRTPO, requested a toll project, this toll project some years ago. Is that right?
Yes.
And when did that happen? Roughly?
That was 2000, was it 7 was the
Seven.
fast lane study.
2007.
7 is
But
what we have.
that's the first round of prioritization.
That has been ratified since then, right?
Yeah, so it was adopted P 3.0 2014.
So, and in layman's term for me, why would any local planning organization say, yes, we want a toll road instead of we want a publicly delivered free general purpose lane? Like, why did this body do that? Why would anybody do that? Because no one would sort of electively choose a toll road that I can imagine. So I'm trying to understand why my forebears did that, if you can explain.
Well,
That's a tough one.
yeah, Commissioner, it would be
Well-
very tough for me to answer that or to speak for a collective group of elected officials. But I will tell you that from a pure transportation engineering perspective, just zero, just that's not an opinion, it's not anything else, that tolling and managed lanes are a tool in the toolbox, right? So, places across the country that experience great levels of congestion on their corridors that, these lane, you've been to places, maybe, Atlanta, I don't know, maybe LA, maybe Houston, where you've got very, very wide roadways. If they're all, general purpose lanes, you can see they might just be stacked up with cars all the time. And so tolling allows you to manage that. And so it is a tool in the toolbox. But specifically why this board voted on it, I can't speak for that, but it's a tool there.
I think, Mr. Chair, if I can just comment on that.
Please go ahead.
One thing for Mayor Knox, I can assure this board that the department is very conscious of local concerns on this issue, very concerned. I think that I was actually on this body from the Charlotte side in 07. If the option was no road or a toll road, I think that's why some would have voted for a toll road. Going forward in this state, we do not have enough resources allocated for the transportation assets we need. In my personal opinion, you're going to see a lot more toll roads if in fact the state wants to catch up, because we're behind.
And I think you're right. I mean, it certainly was a timing issue again. And as Brett said, it was a tool in the toolbox. And if then, and I'm not going to speak for way back when they made these decisions, but I'm going to guess that they figured out that they couldn't pay for it. And they were looking for the need and they're looking for a way to fund it. In my business, I do a lot of that kind of third-party funding when I need it. So maybe that was a thought process. I can't say, and I probably wouldn't guess, but the only guess I would venture is they needed to figure out a way to pay for it.
Thank you. So when you say, this project has been around for a number of years, and you reference what we have planned and prioritized, are you referring to the option that would be delivered in the 2045 to 2050 year range? Is that what you're referring to when you're talking about this project that's
Well,
been
when I'm
around?
saying this project, I'm referring to the I-77 South corridor, generally speaking, from uptown area to near the South Carolina line.
Right.
That project that's in the STIP is I-5718.
And has it not been, if this was decided back in 2013 or 2007, whichever you said, has it not been begun yet? Because again, we knew that it would be a 30, 40-year wait. Is that why the publicly delivered option has not yet been initiated?
So it's been initiated, it has been initiated in the sense that we've been working on that project. We've been doing a lot of preliminary engineering. We've got a lot of great concepts, Stephen. Yeah.
Yeah, Brett, let me just pick up a little bit here. I think that this actually ties into something, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to say at the end. There's a lot of projects from 07 that haven't gone forward because of a lack of resources. And what's going to happen when the board meets next month, which by the way is in Charlotte, and it's always open to the public. It'll be on June 16th, 3:30 at the Valentine Hotel. We're not very entertaining, but you're more than welcome to come. We'll do the same thing. We'll look at what the priorities are because there's this body and several other around the state that put in suggestions, excuse me, of what they want. And this has to be evaluated in the total case of where we are. We're also in the middle of a new state budget. There's been some more resources allocated to DOT, but it's certainly not enough to meet the demands that we have. To put it in simple terms, if you took every demand on every STIP, it's about, I think, Brett, $80 billion we looked at over 10
I think
years.
there was like about a $40 billion gap is what it was.
Yeah,
Between what's identified as a need
Yeah.
collectively across the state versus what we actually have funding for.
And about
So-
$7 billion in maintenance. These are serious funding
Huge
issues.
gap.
Thank you. I'm sorry, just real fast, two more quick things. Slide 6, if we can go to slide 6, and piggybacking on what Commissioner Bilodeau was asking, I think. You know, when you get to the process of comparing revenue and costs with the options on the table, I agree that the ability to sort of honor contract terms, like really big ones, like, are you going to stay 45% traffic in the managed lane? And, you know, at every 15-minute increment, update the price so you can induce demand. Like if they don't, I may have misstated the terms, but the general concept of ensuring that there's a balance of flow in the lanes, you know, if they can't do that well, then I would respectfully submit that is a critical term of an analysis and evaluation that I'm going to be wanting to hear from y'all when you make your presentation. And then the last thing I wanted to just ask you is, did I understand you to say that you're going to compare Centra and the public option before you, which I understand is like a year out, but I just want to make sure that before we make a decision between private or P3 versus public, that it's not only Centra that gets evaluated. Like, will we get to compare other
So we're
P3
not comparing,
options?
we're not comparing the central proposal to the public option. We're comparing the public option to a P3 scenario. Put the central proposal aside, it's actually irrelevant in that part of the conversation. What that analysis will tell us is what's viable and what's not, you know. It's going to give us a lot more information so we can make a better decision.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Ed,
I just want to repeat again, we use the word toll road, managed lanes. We ought to be perfectly clear about that before my friend Warren has kittens over there, okay? The thing that's proposed would continue to operate 3 free lanes. The drivers in the free lanes would benefit from the fact that some people may choose to pay money in order to use the managed lanes. And the pricing of those lanes is designed to incent people to use it up to a point where you have at least a speed of 45. So this whole thing came up on the North project. It's coming up against now because there is some other revenue source that is needed. What is the least painful way to find more money? So you offer this option to people who are willing to pay. You don't take away the option of traveling on the free road. You improve the outlook for the free road because of the traffic that's choosing to use the managed lanes. It's not pretty. I don't like it. As far as I'm concerned, I pay my taxes and I assume that pays for roads. But the reality of where we are with corridor caps, with the constraints on state funding, with the battles that are going on in the state right now as to how they might be able to widen the funding they have for projects. And I heard the speaker talk at the Alliance a month or two ago about EV taxes, registration fees, taxing vehicle miles, the different things that are being considered to give the state a better ability to meet this challenge. I once heard that the total project amount was 100 billion and exceeded the capacity. But in any case, that's how this happens. That's why this happens. But toll roads means you drive up and you can't use the road unless you put money in the hopper or you've got an easy pass. Managed lanes means what I just said. So I think that's a consideration as we evaluate this. And on the north one, it came down to you can have this solution with the managed lanes or you're not going to have a road for a long, long time. And given conditions on that road, people were receptive to a new idea. Thank you.
And I think it's again to Lee's question a little bit. I mean, this thing's been in so-called in the hopper since 2007. And here we are today. We still don't have anywhere close to a solution yet. And so we need to keep moving that ball forward, trying to figure out, you know, how this is going to be done without the state itself. And I'll just kind of say it loosely, in the state, without them being willing to raise revenue. Gas tax, tire tax, whatever we want to call a road tax. They're going to have to look for other solutions. So maybe this is the catalyst for some influence in that as well. So I really appreciate, you know, the effort. Around the table one more time, anybody? Brett, thank you very much for that. And we look forward to another quarterly update on it. In the meantime, if anybody does have any questions along the way, contact staff so we can then address those individually. But I think right now we let the process happen and then we make discoveries along the way. And the Q&A and the valuable Q&As that we had here tonight will help shape this even farther along. So with that, I'm going to move down to upcoming agenda items. Mr. Burke, you're up.
Thank you. What we know in terms of the June 21st CRTPO board agenda, we have two important actions that Travis presented information reports on this evening. So the CRTPO board will be asked to adopt the 2024 through 2033 Transportation Improvement Program, as well as the 2050 MTP amendments and air quality conformity determination associated with the TIP. And then the second action that we know about is the review of the draft project lists that Travis and the CRTPO team have been assembling, and the request to open a 30-day public comment period on those draft project lists for P 7.0. We're also aware of an information report that will be conducted by Bjorn Hansen of Union County regarding a proposed amendment to the comprehensive transportation plan regarding a new alignment of the Waxhaw Parkway. And then I have just a few upcoming issues to identify. So CRTPO will be conducting its federal certification review. Actually, FHWA and the Federal Transit Administration will be doing this. This is something that we do every 4 years. That has been scheduled for Tuesday, June 27th. And this is in federal law. Every 4 years, both the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration jointly review, evaluate, and certify the transportation planning processes of MPOs with populations that exceed 200,000 people. The last review we had was in March of 2020. The FHWA is changing its review cycle. Thus, we're on a year earlier this time. We'll return to the 4-year cycle after this review. We're not aware of a formal agenda yet, but we anticipate a focus on public involvement in transit. Board members will have an opportunity to meet with Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration staff on June 27th. But Loretta Barron, who's seated at the table with us, our FHWA liaison, has stated she can meet with members at other times. Loretta will be here for the June 1st TCC meeting, so if June 1st works for you all, or also before the June 21st board meeting. But please email me if you want a meeting with Loretta, and I'll help to coordinate that because she needs some lead time. She's based out of Raleigh. And let's see. Additional information regarding the certification review will be provided to the CRTPO board as we receive it. And lastly, Jarrell has an update on the Federal Transit Administration Section 5307, 5340 split letter. So I'll turn it over to Jarrell.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jarrell Leonard with CRTPO Transit Planner. So there was correspondence sent out earlier this spring to all of the 5307 split letter MOU memorandum of understanding providers for the 2023 split letter. They have until per the MOU, they have approximately 60 days to return with their local documentation match. And the closing date for it is Friday, June 2nd.
All right. All right. Thank you for that. On those updates. All right. All through?
Yes.
All right. Very good. All right. We'll just move quickly. It's getting a little bit later. We're moving through the meeting. So any board member comments for the good of the group?
Mr. Chair, there's a new state bill. It's come out of the Senate, SB 512. I recommend that all elected officials here read it. It has substantial changes in how several major departments are organized, including Department of Transportation. Probably the most significant change in government structure in 50 years. Thank you.
Wow, that's a big one. Long reading, I take it? Not that long.
Yes.
All right. All right. Thanks for that. I find myself having to review these bundle of bills lately. It's really taken up a lot of time and effort, but well worth it. Anyway, anybody else in the group? Raise hands. Yep. Oh. Gotta be careful. So,
Recognize.
yeah, you'll recognize real quick. All right. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Second, around, all in favor? All right, everybody wants to go home. Thank you, everybody. And thanks for being here tonight and being patient.